Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of the Hearts of Men podcast, hosted by the Empowering Perspective community. We are your hosts for this evening's conversation. As you can see, we have a full house. My name is Dwayne Dwyer. I go by the Mindset Coach. To my left and to my right, I am joined by my brothers, the Uncle Junior himself, Mr. Garfield Martin, known as the Consistency Coach. Also, Mr. Poor Man's Dr. Phil, Mr. Roland Walker, also known as the man of many hats. Below us, we're joined by our brothers, Mr. Christopher McClellan, from across the table with Christopher McClellan, who is the angry guy trying to learn, and also Mr. Tawami Gaddy, the son of Timothy, also known as the available man. So, with that being said, gentlemen, how are you doing this fine Friday evening?
I'm doing
I
great
am
this
strong.
doing great.
Well, it's over
Right.
100 degrees outside and I'm inside, so I'm doing all right.
The Texas weatherman, I
Heard
love it.
that.
Hey, I can't complain. I can't complain. Life is great.
All right, man. It don't sound great. You all right? You good? Let's send some energy that brother way real quick.
Mm.
Hey, listen, we greatly appreciate you guys joining us. So wherever you're joining us from, first of all, go ahead and hit the like button as we continue to go ahead and press forward with this introduction. And first and foremost, and secondly, I want to make sure that I celebrate you. So if this is your first time joining us, look in the bottom right hand corner of your screen, click on the little icon and subscribe to the channel, and then get in the chat, announce your presence so we can celebrate you. As we're pressing forward, I would like to say welcome to the show, Miss Lisa Keys, Miss Michelle Ray, Miss Crystal Everett, Miss Bernadette Simmons, Cassandra McKenzie, Miss Charlotte Jordan, as always, welcome. And Brother Christian Barrow, welcome, welcome, welcome. And again, for all of you out there, again, if this is your first time with us, go ahead and get in the chat so we can celebrate you as well. Um, we're going to continue on this conversation from today, but before I get started, I want to make sure that I address and tell everybody who actually participate to contributing to this show how much we greatly appreciate you. So for all of our super chats and our for all of our super chatters out there, I just want to thank you for the donations that you give to the platform. Again, we appreciate you and we always give back. And then I want to go and thank those people who have joined the Empowering Perspective membership program. Listen, this is the thing I want to share with everybody out there because the Empowering Perspective membership program is phenomenal. This is the point I want everybody to remember. People will never behave consistently in programming. That said, the gateway to change is to rewrite the code of your programming. That is why we created the Empowering Perspective membership program, to rewrite the code of your programming. The Empowering Perspective membership program is your gateway to progression and self-improvement. Through personalized resources, a supportive community of like-minded people, and thought-provoking content, we empower you to transform your perspective, unleash your potential, and embark on a journey of continuous growth through this e-learning platform. This is not just a membership. It's a commitment to evolving your worldview, enhancing your skills, and enriching your life. Discover the power within. Join the Empowering Perspective membership program today. So if you are on YouTube, look right below your screen. If you're on your computer, look right below your screen. You see a join button. Click the join button, and that's your access. If you're on a mobile device, just check the show notes. We have access in the show notes, and that's how you can be a part of the Empowering Perspective membership program. That said, that takes us into the topic of this conversation today. So, we're going to continue our conversation on harnessing small wins for greater emotional intelligence. Now, the problem people struggle to develop and enhance their emotional intelligence because they perceive the process as a large, daunting task that requires significant immediate change. The challenge lies in their lack of understanding and recognition that emotional intelligence can be cultivated and grown incrementally through a series of small, manageable steps or wins. Moreover, these small wins often go unnoticed or undervalued, either because people aren't aware of them or they dismiss them altogether. This can lead to a sense of stagnation or frustration in their journey to enhance emotional intelligence. People may feel they aren't making progress, when in fact they might be overlooking the small wins or incremental improvements. Finally, there's a lack of guidance or resources on how to identify, appreciate, and harness these small wins to foster greater emotional intelligence, further exacerbating the issue. Overall, the problem is rooted in the misconception that large transformative changes are necessary for improving emotional intelligence, coupled with the failure to recognize, appreciate, and build upon the small wins along the way. So, last week we defined emotional intelligence, and I want to just kind of give a real quick overview because I think just looking at the entirety of the word or the phrase itself doesn't necessarily add value to it. We need to understand what the term intelligence itself looks like. And I think, in essence, it is just your ability to learn. That's it. So when you look at artificial intelligence, so artificial intelligence isn't a thinking platform. It is a platform that progressively gets better based upon the information that you add to it. That said, the same thing applies to your concept when it comes down to emotional intelligence. So the information that you learn in the moment about yourself can help you to grow in the concept of emotional intelligence. I think if we look at it from that perspective, that kind of makes things simple and plain. So moving on, doing a real quick recap from last week. Last week we kind of talked about the emotional intelligence challenges. And remember, I told you there were 7 of them, and we was only going to talk about 3. And so the 3 that we talked about was lack of education, resistance to change, and cultural differences. That brings us to what we're talking about today: feelings. I know it. I'm ready for it. Let's get on with it. So, there's only 3 points we're going to address today. The first point is going to be understanding different types of feelings. Now, under the concept and the idea of understanding different types of feelings, I want everybody to understand something real quick first. The first step to creating a higher sense of awareness about feelings is to understand the different types of feelings we may experience. Feelings are more than just happiness, sadness, anger, or fear. They include a wide range of emotions such as frustration, disappointment, loneliness, contentment, and more. By comprehending the range of our emotional responses, we can become more in tune with our emotional selves and enhance our emotional intelligence. That being said, that takes us to our first scenario. Gentlemen, imagine it's your daughter's 10th birthday and you've spent weeks planning a special surprise party for her. You've secretly invited her closest friends, ordered her favorite cake, and decorated the house with her beloved cartoon characters. However, when the big moment arrives and she sees the surprise, instead of the joy and excitement you expected, she bursts into tears and runs to her mom. First question that I want to hit you guys with, and we're going to keep the scenario flowing at the bottom. First question I want to hit you guys with: how would you navigate and dissect the multitude of feelings that could arise from such a situation?
You know, I guess first I would have to deal with the disappointment that I would feel after putting in all of that work and doing all of those things for my daughter. And I would have to remove all of that before I even addressed my daughter. Because sometimes I have seen where a parent will do something and the child gives a different reaction than the parent expected, and automatically it's anger. You ungrateful. How can you do this? I put in all of this work. You so this, you so that. I would have to remove all of that. And then I would say, Mom, this one is on you because she's a daughter. I have no idea how to interpret any of that because one, I am not a woman. I know that women have a myriad of emotions that they go through. I do not know. Mom, I need you to take care of that. I need you to let me know when you need me. But I have your back. But this one is on you because I do not understand. And when she's ready to talk to me, we can talk.
I like where Chris went with this, when he kind of not put it on mom, but you know, brought up mom in this situation. Um, this is a big one. It can be really big. I think that, I will say this in my previous marriage, when I had my 3 sons, it wasn't as important to us who the child chose to cling to, or who they decided to share certain information with. What was important is that we got the information, because doing as children grow up, there may be certain times where your child may be closer to you, more or closer to you than they are the mom, or vice versa. So what's important is that you get the information. So first of all, the fact that she went to mom, at least there's some sort of connection there to where she felt safe with mom to be able to confide in her and express her feelings with her mother. So I think starting right there is where you have to go. Me, I'm kind of like Chris. I'm gonna be kind of hands off for a little bit, kind of see how mom is handling things, and then I'm going based off of how mom is flowing and how she's kind of sort of doing things. I'm taking cues from her. You know what I mean? Daughter went to go confide in mom. I'm going to sit back like what Chris say. When mom say, "Hey, dad, I need you for X, Y, and Z," I will jump in when I'm needed. I'm also going to be aware and be looking around to kind of see if there is any way that I can support, because that's my daughter. And even though she's 10 years old, I still know her a little bit as well. So I'm still looking for certain keys, or certain behaviors or something like that, to where I may be able to come in and support her if she needs me.
Whew. Well, the way that this scenario played out, there's so many things that will go through my head. Last thing, I can't. Let me not say the last thing for me would be disappointment, because of course you're disappointed that she's not excited, right? But it would be concerned because there are many different scenarios that could tie in with this, right? That can come from this. So why was she bursting into tears in the first place? Is it somebody that showed up? Is she too old for cartoons, or whatever the case may be? Do we need to change the venue? Because it's her birthday, it's about her. So if it's about the event, if we can make the change, let's make the change, and let's get her smiling and enjoying her day. But I'm I'm on boat with the sit back and let mom handle it for a little while, only because she ran to mom. Because if there's a scenario that's going on, she might have already confided in mom that something was going on, maybe with one of the friends she's not cool no more, and I invited them over to the surprise birthday party, and I didn't know, you know. So I'm gonna keep a close ear, because if that's the case, you know, what do we have to do? Because as an adult male, you also don't want to hurt the feelings of some other child that you already brought over. You know, is it can get sticky, but at the end of the day, for me, the goal is to figure out what's the problem, and let's fix it, because it's a birthday and we need to get some smiles going. And so that's my main priority on a surprise birthday party, on the birthday party period, is let's get her smiling, let's get her happy, let's get her enjoying the day. Uh, and if there's something that needs to be handled, let's handle it.
Shoot. As a person who was a single girl dad for a long period of time, where I had my daughters actually living with me, like in their teen years and everything else. I couldn't say call mom for everything, and I realized that a lot of it's the same person instead of actually dealing with it. Whereas sometimes it just takes a conversation and just getting to know your child. And I'm with Chris, where you got to take you out of the equation, because sometimes we build up these elaborate things and we expect them, hey, you better act like you just saw the space shuttle go off. And instead of that, when you get something like this, I don't want to be outside of the room when mom is seeing what's wrong, because I want to be able to identify things if it's just me and her, because mom may not be around. So I think I would have taken her out of the area, and we would have had a conversation. I may allow mom to direct it, but we got to get down to the root of actually what the problem is, so that we can handle it and go back and do what the available man said: go out here and have a party. Because if it's something that triggers her, I don't want to have to go to mom every time and say, well, what's she like? Or what is this? I those relationship her where I can say, okay, I'm recognizing and know this is her. So instead of me going that route, because I may have thought this is her favorite toy, this is her favorite item, and it's something that her friend took from her or something like that. That's why I was always involved with when they came home from school, whether it was a boy or girl. I'm asking questions. How was this? How does it these? How do your friends treat you? And so when you get to know them, you realize that everybody's just little people. And sex goes now. If it's some things where you talking about your little woman situation and all that other stuff, I probably can't handle that. I might need to get some help on that one. But when it's certain a pain or a hurt, I need to be able to identify what hurts
Yeah, I like it. It sounds as though that everybody's in compliance or incongruent with the same response. Pretty much let mom take the lead. And I think Roland, you hit the piece that I was going to address. Like, sure, I definitely would let mom take the lead because that's what she went to. But I'm going in the room. I want to know. I want to know what's going on. Um, but then I think at a certain point, because I like to progress to and through, right? So I'm going in the room, I'm trying to see what's going on, trying to see how I can help, come to some type of resolution, not because I'm trying to rush to the party, but because I'm trying to figure out what's going on with my daughter. That's more important to me than the party. Now, once I have at least a somewhat of an understanding, how she's feeling, what's going on, and I realize, mom, you got it. I'm going to make eye contact with mom and I'm going to point to the kitchen and either she's going to give me the nod or whatever the case may be. And I'm going back and I am going to continue to party because if I can continue to party, I think she'll realize that she's missing out on her own party and then eventually she'll come back. It's not that what we're saying, it's not that we're saying that how she feels isn't important, but we got a whole bunch of people here and I don't want to just reject them either. So this can be somewhat challenging because sometimes you can feel torn between, and I think the right thing is to see our daughter first. Both parents go and check on the daughter, make sure the daughter is fine. Let's cater to what's going on with her and make sure that she's okay. And once, one of us take the lead and we understand exactly what's going on, then one filters back in the kitchen and then or in the kitchen, wherever it's at, wherever the party's at, in the backyard, the kitchen, the living room, wherever you're hosting a party at. And then now we are actually having everybody else having a party and we'll save the happy birthday song and all that other stuff until she comes out and start feeling a little bit better. And I think that'll be the right thing to do. Again, that's how I would do it. I'm not saying that that's the most perfect way to do it, but that's how I would do it. And then that way, it'll just give the impression that she probably went around there to change or do something or whatever that looks like. Um, so I appreciate everybody's response on this. I want to make sure I didn't miss anybody because it seemed like some more people joined us. And again, I do not want to miss celebrating you. So Nick D, welcome to the show. Good to see you. Miss Verlene McCoy, aka Queen V, good to see you. King Coop, welcome to the show, brother. Always good to see you. Want to make sure I didn't miss anybody. Okay, I am Flizzy. Welcome to the show. Good to see you. So I think we got another question in relation to this particular scenario. I think we do, or do we not? Nope, we do not. Okay. So that takes us to our next point then. The next point is recognizing the triggers of our feelings. Now, the scenario for this one is feelings don't occur in a vacuum. I want to start there. They are usually a response to some sort of external or internal trigger. It could, am I reading the right one? Yeah, forget it. That's the third one. Don't worry about it. That's the third. Put that one away. I get there. So feelings don't occur in a vacuum. They are usually a response to some sort of external or internal trigger. It could be an interaction with someone, a thought, a memory, or even a physical sensation. Being able to identify what triggers um, yeah, being able to identify what triggers certain feelings in us can give us a significant amount of control over our emotional responses and reactions. Now, the scenario. Let's consider this situation where every time you try to have a conversation with your spouse about finances and budgeting, it leads to an argument. You notice that you feel a sense of anxiety and frustration each time this topic comes up, and it's beginning to strain your relationship. That being said, gentlemen, the question that I have for you is how can we begin to recognize and understand the triggers that fuel these feelings of anxiety and frustration?
But this is something that I recognize for sure. This talking about money and bills and how things are, because when two people don't necessarily communicate, you think it should go that way, she thinks it should go this way, and I'm a person where I don't like bills to be late. I like to know what's coming out, what's coming in. I'm a person where, hey, just let me handle it. And sometimes I don't communicate it to the other person. So I'm always doing, not realizing that if the other person has to do it in my absence, like where you learn this in the military, where when you deploy, bills still got to get paid. And one thing about I learned quickly when my name was on the water bill, and in Copper's Cove, when you ain't here, your name got to be on the water bill for you to pay the water bill. And things like that, that's where communication has to be one of those things, because when certain people were growing up, bills not getting paid, lights getting cut off, that may be a trigger. And you taking it as a small thing where they're taking it like, nah, that's a big thing for me. So you have to be able to recognize triggers in yourself as well as your spouse or your significant other, so that you don't sit up there and just nonchalantly blow it off, and then they're stressed out and then an argument occurs, and it's just a bad situation overall.
So let me start by saying this is my philosophy when it comes to finances, right? Because I don't like to argue. First of all, I don't like to argue, period, right? I don't like it because, growing up, we was always taught, you know, hey, get a fair one in and it's over. You can't do that with a spouse, right? So I just don't like to argue. I try to, mitigate or have a conversation when things can be cool. But when it comes to finances, because of that, I always give that opportunity. Hey, you handle the finances and hear me out, because I know a lot of men out there saying, men should pay all the bills. I pay my money, pay the bills. But my philosophy has always been, as long as the bills are paid, I don't want to care about whatever else you do with the money. I don't want to ask you about money. I just make sure the bills are paid, right? Make sure you're responsible. Let me know if when I got money to do what I got to do. I'll let you know what I'm trying to do, and I'm gonna keep it pushing. I'm not even going because but that's me. I'm simplistic. I don't buy a lot of stuff. I'm not really fashionable. I like to look nice, but I'm not fashionable. I don't have to always have new pair of shoes. Just clean the ones I got, right? But once again, that's me. So, so that's my. But I'm saying that because I don't believe in arguing over finances, right? And that as a man, I understand. I grew up around women that women like to spend, so I'm not going to go. I'm not going to do the back and forth. So, how do you identify the triggers? For me, it's easy. And like unlike Roland, I can't identify them because I try to alleviate them. I don't even try to go into that realm. But unfortunately, you still fall into a back and forth in a fight. What if my bills ain't paid? So now I go in and I address. And if I see that it becomes a problem that I'm addressing, I'm saying, hey, listen, I only have one stipulation: the bills are paid. Let's not. That's one thing we can't slip on. All right. If I need to take over responsibilities, or if I need to whatever need be, but I'm going to go back to what Roland say. I'm unlike you, or I'm not saying all women are, but unlike you, I'm going to communicate with you everything that's going on. Hey, the bills are paid. This is what we got. This is what it looks like. This is what we got to play with. That's it. I'm not gonna fight with it.
Somebody already typed it in the chat, but I am going to say it. There would be no marriage without a discussion about budgeting and finances at all. The bills need to be paid. I do not care about what you want. These need to be paid. I am not going to come home and flip a light switch and nothing happened. I am not going to go into my bathroom and turn the hot water nozzle on and cold water pop out. That is not going to happen. This needs to be taken care of. Anything outside of that, we can discuss. But the bills are a necessity. Without those things, this house folds. Anything outside of that is a discussion. You want to save for a trip, you want to do this or you want to do that, or why are you so upset about me talking about budgeting and finances in the first place? What about this is making you so upset? Why is it that every time we have this discussion, it ends in this? I am not trying to control you. I'm just trying to make sure that this house is functioning. I have to make sure that this house is functioning because if I don't, then the house fails to function. Why is that so upsetting? I need to know these things. And then we will discuss that. Now, if it turns into, oh, I was in this situation and he tried to control me with his money, I'm not him. Go get therapy. This needs to be taken care of. You are not about to hold me hostage for something somebody else did. No. I already said this before. I do not negotiate with terrorists. We are going to pay these bills. After that,
I think Chris done. Okay. Hey, um, I'm with Chris. Part of this, I understand everything that everybody's saying. I think that if you were having this conversation, then there was not some communication that wasn't had previously. It is what it is. It happens to a lot of people. I would say that in my first marriage, that conversation wasn't had. And there were conversations that and frustration and arguments when it came down to money and different things like that. And I think what part of what it comes down to is sometimes people feel like they're being controlled when you just are looking at trying to have a solution and trying to say, hey, look, well, we got to live to 85. I understand you want to go on a trip every single year. However, I want to be able to do some stuff at 85 as well. I don't want to have to work until I'm 97 years old. So um but I think how can we begin to recognize and understand the triggers is, first of all, how is the behavior once when something comes up. If I bring up, hey, let's do a budget, you're like, oh, then I know I'm recognizing, hey, that's a trigger right here. Now we need to have a conversation about why is it that you get upset or why you're triggered by this or that. Come to figure out exactly, or try to come to an understanding about what is causing these triggers, and then work towards some sort of solution so we can eventually have the conversation about the money going forward. But like I said, behaviors, body language, certain words that people say, all of those will start help you begin to recognize and understand when they're triggers. Like I said, you start bringing up money, they don't want to talk about it. When you say, hey, how much money in your account, if that's for something that you decide to do, and they like, oh, why you always ask me what's in my account? Like different things like that, then I think that those are some of the things that you can start recognizing when it comes to people's behavior that may be causing some of the triggers that fuel those feelings of anxiety and frustration.
So I'm glad you went there, Garfield, because I was going to bring it back to that because I'm agreeing with everybody. Like before there is a marriage, there has to be several conversations that take place, and money management is definitely one of those conversations. But I want to get to the point of, in the midst of the conversation, when I am bringing up the issues with finances, how do we begin to recognize and understand those triggers? Like, it says here clearly. that there's some feeling and anxiety that was in the scenario. You notice that you feel a sense of anxiety and frustration each time this topic comes up. So before I kind of dive into this, I want you guys to kind of address that. What if the behavior is in me, or what if the behavior is in her? Kind of talk about it from both perspectives, because I think that's important when it comes down to this question. This question here in particular, because I know for a fact that a lot of people deal with this because I did.
I think sometimes some of us grew up in lack. So we don't know what it is. So we try to hold on to every dime we get. And we feel anybody trying to spin, oh, she wanted to go get her a new wig or something. And you feel, oh, well, we need that money for just to save, just in case. It's like sometimes you got to save everything. Her and her husband split things 50-50, and then they have a savings account just for bills. Fine. If that worked, that means you had a conversation beforehand, so we know what we have going in and coming out. And then if there's no control, because sometimes people get controlling when it comes to money. Well, I'm paying this and I'm paying that. So it's like, do as I say while you're talking to grown people when they're not children. And you can't handle grown people that fashion, because they'll start to get dismissive and want to get away from
you. Yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
Nah, you got it, Unc. You got it.
I get that. However, like I'm saying, like we like we got to get to the end of the road. You know what I mean? We got to get to the end of the road. So, you know, before last week, the 3 weeks before that, we were talking about having a difficult conversation. This is one of those things that can really be a difficult or challenging conversation, especially if your communication skills suck. You know what I mean? Just being honest. You know, when it comes to different things like that, you know, if you are recognizing those things in yourself, then you have to look at yourself in the mirror and be like, look, why am I keep getting upset every time we bring up money, every time we bring up finances? What's wrong with me? You know what I mean? And the same thing goes with her or the other person, that your partner or your wife or your husband or whoever you're with. Like, you have to recognize it. Someone have to recognize it. And when it's recognizing, someone has to address it. And you have to have that difficult conversation if it's going to be one. But you have to address it, like regardless of who it is. You know, coach talking about, you know, we was talking about recognizing, you know, if I'm like, well, let me back up, let me pause real quick. I'm going too fast. Um, I think that you have to have that conversation. And if you don't have the conversation, these are the things that's going to happen. But I think a lot of this anxiety and frustration, it comes from safety, from a point of being secure, like Roland said, you know, a lack of not having, know how that is. And then when someone comes in who doesn't have the same ideas with finances and money as you do, then there's conflict because we don't necessarily agree on what we should do with the money. Hey, all the bills are paid. I'm in the army. I only get paid once a month. You know, it's the second. I got everything paid. I got $200 left until payday. Well, someone will say, hey, we got $200 until payday. Let's go and spend. Someone else may say, hey, no, we need to hold on to this $200 because we don't have an emergency fund and we may blow a tire. We may run out of gas. We may do X, Y, and Z. So the problem comes in when two people don't agree on what should be done with the money. That's why you have to have the conversation. You have to have a plan about what is best for our money as a couple. Once there's a plan that both people have talked about and or agreed upon, then whatever's left over, you can do what you want to do because we already have a plan from here to the end of time or for however long you decide to have that plan. But, you know, recognizing those things is, you know, when you start feeling anxiety in yourself, and I don't know, I spun off. Coach going to do a good job of bringing me back. I apologize. I was on a tangent. So I apologize.
No, I think, to be fair, we have to point out the fact that this specific conversation should not take place when the lights are cut off. It needs to take place before we decide we are husband and wives. I think that's where a lot of us make a mistake when we mixed into our infatuation phase. We forget to have the tough conversations that need to be had now. Because do we have the same mind when it comes to money and saving? Some people literally have the ideology, hey, money is meant to spend. So if there's money, I'm going to spend. Some people have the ideology, hey, we have money. I want to have money again tomorrow. Let's not spend. Some people are mixed in the middle, but do we have the same ideology when it comes to money and finances? And then how do we meet both in the in the middle? Because, you know, you're very rarely you find somebody who you see eye to eye with on everything, right? If ever. So there got to be some give and take ground in the beginning of if we're going to have this plan, what is it going to look like that both of us can accomplish at least early on? Because if I don't believe in saving or have an impulse issue, I'm not going to become a big saver tomorrow because you said you like saving. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's something that we have to start discussing before we get that deep into the mix.
Got to jump in. And we all know some people who just have bad spending habits where you will see they'll be fresh to death, got bad habits. You see them drinking, smoking, all this other stuff. And then next thing you know, hey, can I borrow? Can I borrow? Those are the people that we marry. People marry those people. And then we have a couple generations who were you can't trust that she may have a stash and you don't even know about it. So when she goes or when something is in need, mama always need and trust me, I can tell you from experience, when kids need stuff, they go to mama. When they need big stuff, they come to you. They need a refrigerator, they come to you. But from personal experience. But if they need a couple $100, $200-$300, they going to mama. And mama ain't gonna say nothing to you. She gonna slip them that little hug and handshake, give them a kiss, and send them on their way. And you don't know nothing about it because women put money to the side. Women save money, and you sitting up there giving. And this is not everybody. I know this, so don't come at me. And I know my thing is choppy because we got bad weather here in Texas. But that's a reality in some households where the other spouse has a little secret stash and whatnot.
All of that is well and good, secret stashes and all of that. But if we do not come to common ground when it comes to finances and budgeting for our future, then we do not have one. I cannot be with someone that is fiscally irresponsible. No, I can't. You must be fiscally disciplined. As long as the bills are paid and you take 10% of whatever you earn, just like I take 10% of whatever I earn and put it away, you can do what you want because we have our bills paid and we have our emergency fund taken care of. But you are not about to go buy a wig when the light bill is due and you ain't paid it. No, that is not going to happen. I do not care how you were raised. I do not care how your mom slipped you whatever. I do not care how your father spoiled you. You are a grown woman in a different situation. Let's deal with that part of it. Now, if it is coming from me, then I know that the anxiety and frustration is coming from a scarcity mindset. I am afraid of something not being able to be taken care of. I have to get over that because that has nothing to do with her. That's me. I cannot dump my anxiety and frustrations about a scarcity mindset that I grew up with on my spouse. That is unfair. I do not believe you should do that. If it is coming from her, it is probably because nobody told her that she actually had to put something aside for a rainy day just in case something happened. She's used to having a backup plan, or she's used to somebody slipping her something on the side because it is there, because that's baby girl. No, you are not baby girl anymore. You are my fiance, about to be my wife. Grow up. Let's get these finances taken care of. Be the grown woman that you claim you are every 2 seconds that we have this conversation. Let's fix this. then do what you want to do. But as long as the bills are paid and that 10 to 20% of how of whatever you earn is put away, I do not care what you do. But this needs to be taken care of before anything happens. And if you cannot do that, then you cannot be with me, and I want my ring back. I told you I do not negotiate with terrorists. We are not doing this. No.
For the record, if Mrs. Gaddy end up watching this later, you still baby girl. Love you.
Wow, that
Hey,
just happened.
I gotta go to sleep tonight. Hey, that's all I'm saying.
That just happened. You know what? I am agreeing. I am in violent agreement with you guys. Um, because I remember this actually being my actual situation. Like seriously, like anytime I brought up a conversation about finances because of what the facts told me. I want to make sure I'm stressing that because of what the facts told me. Whenever I brought up any conversation about finances, it was almost as though I don't know, it was like I was taking something away from her in that particular moment, the response that I got. And in my mind, I'm looking at her like, why in the world are you responding like that when I'm just trying to have an understanding of everything that's going on? Because at the end of the day, I'm always on the go. I'm deployed. I'm doing this. We're going to NTC, any other TC you can think of. We're in the field for X amount of days. So, what it really boiled down to is that I was letting her pay the bills and she was paying the bills. And to Chris's point, it was, she had an emergency fund, but the emergency fund had my name on it. I was the emergency fund. So whenever she ran into problems, she was just like, hey, we got a problem. Like, what happened to the emergency fund? You are it. That's just, I'm saying that jokingly, but that's just really what it turned out to be. I think the answer for me, in conjunction with everything that these gentlemen said, and Chris, I like the fact you brought in the idea of the scarcity mindset, which coincides with what Roland said about lack, because I think a lot of times we reflect, we stay in the past, reflecting on our upbringing that we set in our mind that we are going to create the lifestyle so I don't ever have to see that again. Not necessarily understanding that we have to have a contingency fund, we have to plan for rainy days and things of that nature. And I love the fact, I think it was Uncle Junior, you brought in the idea of control. And one of the things I like to say that there is no control. There's only the illusion of control, right? Because at the end of the day, I can't control you and you can't control me. It may give the impression that there's control, but generally that's kind of like the fallback on when a person said when a person is in a space to where they're wanting to tell a person what to do and make them do it and then hold something over their head. But at the end of the day, you get a choice in the matter. And if you get a choice in the matter, there is no control. So and we'll talk more about the scarcity mindset versus the abundance versus the abundance mindset later on, especially in the program. For me, the team is the important thing. If we're not team players, then we're individuals. I want to make sure I'm saying that again. The team is the most important thing. If we're not playing for the team, then I'm playing for myself. So when it comes down to finances, if the team isn't the first thing that comes to my mind before I whip out my debit card or whip out my checkbook or checkbook if people still use checks or whatever it is, if I'm not on the internet typing in numbers, if I'm not thinking about the team first, then I am. I hate that. I'm agreeing with the term that Chris used. I am a terrorist to the team. I am in some cases, unbeknownst to me, I am sabotaging the effectiveness in the health of the entire team. So one person's a team player, the other person isn't a team player, and this person is trying to bring the team back into focus, but this person is trying to keep themselves in focus. So that's kind of like what it is. So the trigger for me, I will just be transparent. When the team becomes the least important person in your mind, then that's a trigger. I don't even care if the action happened yet. If the team becomes the most important, when the team moves out of the number one spot in your mind, it's time for us to have an honest conversation. It might be painful, but we need to stay in it until we figure it out. Because at the end of the day, if we can't figure it out, then there is no team. And I know how to take my ball and leave. I'm just going to be completely transparent with you. That's the thing I keep trying to say. This is why I said before, I think a lot of times there are some people out there, and everybody's an adult and they can do whatever it is they want to do. But in my humble opinion, I think there's a lot of people who got married too soon. I was one of them. I did not have these conversations, which I should have. Thank God I understand how to have them now. So all of these conversations must be had, not just had, but had to such a degree that there's an understanding. I'm talking about a lot of conversations, not just finances. We're talking psychological health, we're talking emotional health, we're talking sex, we're talking child raising, we're talking all of these things before we get to the point of me even giving you a ring and me having to take it back, like Chris said. So I just wanted to say that because, listen, man, that's a hot button topic. Some people think that when they get the ring, it's theirs. No, boo boo, the ring is part of the agreement.
And once you nullify that agreement, that ring comes back.
All right. So we're gonna kind of dive into the chats, man. Listen, I just want to thank you guys because I see you guys are adding value in the chat. And so we kind of want to jump in there. But first, let me address some people here. Angela, Yvette, welcome to the show. The Traveling Geek, always good to see you. You come in with some great questions. I appreciate you. Let me see. Did I miss anybody? TR Harris, welcome to the show. And again, always good to see you and always welcome. I think I got everybody.
Wait a
So
minute. Hold on.
yes, sir.
If you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
Miss Angela Yvette brought up a really, really good thing. Sometimes having conversations like this can be frustrating because either you or your partner were never taught. So let's go learn together. Let's go take a course. Let's go sit in a credit repair seminar. Let's go talk to the sex therapist. Let's go talk to this conversationalist over here so that way I can understand how to talk to you the way that you need me to talk to you, and you can understand my love language too. Let's figure this out together, because we both cannot have anxiety about something this important. Finances and budgeting within a household and a marriage are extremely important because finances is the number 2 reason divorces happen in the first place. So let's nip that in the bud now so we do not have that problem later. You understand what I'm saying? And I'm speaking from statistics and being a former employee of this. Let's fix this now.
See, and I know Angie, she in the military, when I had soldiers, I would make them go see the command finance specialist. If I'm not mistaken, she was a command finance specialist. So whether they wanted to or not, they were going to learn budgeting. They was going to learn how to make out their diagram for what they needed to spend and what they had. Because in the military, you get an 18-year-old, he just got a few $1,000s, and they going to spend it. Yet ain't thinking about the house, the kids, the gas in the car, and the bills and things. And that's where that comes in. You need somebody to walk you through it when you're going to food by yourself.
Yeah, my boy struggling over there. He got some bad weather, y'all. So give him some grace. Give him some grace.
Yeah, I get what Chris is saying, and I get this conversation, everything that Angela wrote too, and kind of like what you said. I think part of it, it's like you, Coach. I got married too early. I got married at 20 years old. You know what I mean? I'd already had a child. My first wife, she was 19 at the time. So 19 and 20-year-old getting married, we didn't have a clue. We had already had a child. We over here trying to work and not work and trying to get all these finances together. But what happened over time was one of us, I'm not going to say who, learned a little bit more about money than the other person. So one person was growing when it came to finances or the knowledge of finances. But then as you grow, sometimes one person can grow about financial knowledge or literacy or whatever like this, and the other person not, maybe because they're not interested in it. And some of the anxiety can come in is when you trying to have those conversations because you've grown and the other person not, and they're just not ready to have it yet. You know what I mean? Like Coach was kind of saying too, it's like you're kind of on different levels, you know what I mean? So you have to come to a certain point and figure out a bridge to where you can have that conversation and move forward.
And I'm gonna be honest with you. I mean, I know I said married early, but I got married ignorant. That's really what the truth is. I had
Yeah.
no idea how to
Yeah.
get married. I'm just going to be completely transparent. Nobody ever sat me down and said, these are the things that you need to do before you say I do. That's an important piece, and finances is huge. I know one time it used to be the number one reason. Chris said it's the number two, and I believe him, because there's a lot of issues that
Number one
happen.
is getting married.
Number one is getting married. So
No, that's funny, but if I can, because I think the problem is I've been hearing this conversation since I was a teenager, right? Uh, I'll be 38 this year, so that's a long time and a lot of marriages for us to still have the same conversation. Like the conversation now is, hey, can y'all with these young kids teach y'all daughters and sons some financial literacy as they grow up so that my kids don't have to have the same conversation on the podcast in 20 years? Like that's where I'm at with it. Like we the half the problem is like what we talked about the last few minutes is parents are not having these conversations at home, right? So why 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 am I growing but my kids are not learning? My children are not learning the things that I'm learning so that they can become adults. And a lot of times we fall back on, well, they're just kids until they're adults and they don't want to hear what you got to say no more because in their mind they're grown and they know it all and now they're making your mistakes. And it's not just because they're kids and they got to make mistakes, it's because some of us didn't teach. All right. And I get it, there's a generation of us that didn't learn this stuff. It wasn't in our community. But our community is growing. We're learning more financial literacy and we're still piecing together these same conversations that I heard the adults having when I was a teenager. And I'm not bashing the conversation because it's needed. What I'm saying is we need to have we need to have a conversation before marriage, but those of us who know better now need to start having a conversation at home with these little ones that are growing up because my son is going to marry somebody's daughter. And when they marry somebody's daughter and they ignorant with money, they're going to say, your daddy ain't teach you nothing. And if the answer is no, the answer is no. So that's my piece with it.
I love it, man, and I'm agreeing with you. It is a parents like and I'm saying this now. I mean, Gad, I appreciate you sharing the fact that you're almost 38, but a couple of us on this panel knocking on the door of 50. But at the end of the day, um, I can honestly say, and I think Roland, you said this before, when we were younger, right? We weren't good parents. And I don't care who you are. I know we like to tell the story. I was a good father. I was a good no, you wasn't. You was just a parent. You were just a mom. You were just a dad with the level of awareness that you had at that particular point in time. Then when you get older and become more aware, you look back and say, man, I wasn't really as good as I thought I was. So that's one of the things that I stress that we got to stop saying good because we understand the Bible says none is good, but one. So at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, we just need to recognize that you were never called to perfection. There's a lot of things that we didn't do right, right? And that's the piece. So as the older generation, Gen Xers, and if we got some boomers on here, what we need to do is turn around and start having conversations like Brother Gaddy just said. Like we need to talk to our younger children who in most cases might be in their 20s, maybe early 30s, and say, listen, these are the things that you need to talk about. You need to sit down and have an honest conversation. And here's the key. If that person before y'all get married is struggling with this conversation, that, my friend, is a sign. I'm just being completely transparent. So let's get after some of these questions. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chris. You got something? Okay, so let's get after some of these statements here. Michelle Ray said there's a level of trust and clear understanding that needs to be established before marriage. Finances should be at the top of that discussion, no matter how painful or frustrating it is. Absolutely. I agree, Michelle, and that was spot on. Moving on to the next one. Lisa Keys says, talking about the household budget, taking financial classes, whatever it takes to remain in harmony. I like the fact she brings in the term harmony because that brings in what I tend to call energy management. Different conversation, different day. But thank you for that, Lisa Keys. Greatly appreciate that. Moving on to the next point. Nevertheless, who that person is pertaining to how they manage money will show up in the honeymoon phase of dating. You know what? I'm glad you said that. I I don't necessarily. So I want to make sure I paint the picture. I can understand why you say that, but I think in most cases people can hold the facade for a very long time. Now, when you're around that person, more times during the day than not, then the facade tends to fade away. Unfortunately, our issues, that guy over there and that guy over there and that guy down in that corner, our concern is military. And for us, what happened? We would leave home for weeks at a time. And so, guess what happens when we come back home? Honeymoon all over again. So every time we leave the house for like 30 days, going to NTC or don't bring in deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan. When we get back, honeymoon all over again. So the facade resets. And so you get to put on the facade, the front, whatever the case may be. I get what you're saying, and I agree with that. But I also agree that that honeymoon phase at some point doesn't necessarily go away until, well, I'm sorry, the facade doesn't necessarily go away when the honeymoon phase is in place because you're still under the cloud. Everything is peaches and creams, and we're skipping through the house, and we're moving around like jackrabbits. Y'all can read between the lines. You know what I'm saying? So you're still under the cloud. So once you come, see, somebody just got it. He was once you come out of the cloud, right? Then you can start to see clearly. So I don't think it's the honeymoon phase. I think it's post honeymoon phase when the blinders start coming off.
I think it's when you start looking at them books of the other person. There's some people out there, they got all kind of stuff. They got credit cards, loans, they doing all kind of stuff. But when y'all dating and y'all living in separate households and y'all are not looking at each other's books and finances, you don't know what the heck they over there doing. You know what I mean? So you could be thinking they're living good and everything is straight. They can have $40,000-$50,000 worth of credit card debt.
That's a good point. I like that.
I mean,
Roland,
but
we
how?
see your lips, brother.
Great.
Great, Daddy. Roland going to town, man. We can't hear nothing he's saying.
He good. He just muted.
Yeah, no, is he? No, he's not muted.
Oh man.
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
We can see you.
Yeah, your audio is gone, bro. Hey, go ahead with your point, Gaddy. We'll wait on Roland for a second.
Now, I was really about to ask the question, like, what does that look like before we're married or engaged or whatever? Because I believe in sitting down and having the conversation as soon as it starts getting serious, right? Because I'll be honest, and a lot of women out there might not like me, but I ain't spending no money until I'm sure this is going somewhere. So you don't ask me for no $300 to get your hair done, no $100 to get your nails done. I'm not doing that in the infatuation phase, right? Like that, but that's me. You know, some people are different. So I'm not going to get into that point of the conversation until I know it's about to get serious. So what does that look like when we talk about, let's start taking a look at the credit and the debt? Like,
it's simple.
Are you talking about as my fiance or at my girlfriend's? Because
if I am thinking about making a woman my wife,
there ain't no girlfriend to look at my finances. Period.
Listen,
I'm having a conversation before it get too serious, because what happens when it get too serious and then you find out she got $160,000 of student loan? Are you ready to give up that relationship, or do you want to take on that $160,000 loan? I want to know early. I ain't waiting till it gets serious. That's just me. I am also married right now, so, and I am not dating, so I would
listen. You are spot on. If I have a girlfriend and I'm thinking about making that girlfriend my wife, hey, log into Experian real quick. I need to see what you got, because I am not marrying you with a liquor debt that I did not incur. You need to take care of this. Flat out.
Now, when you talk about student loans, I'm not sure that's fair unless you marrying somebody 60 that been paying on their student debt without.
Why is it not fair?
I'm just
fair.
because student.
It is very fair.
You got 160. No,
most college students
don't.
College students don't even get a job.
Who cares? You were grown enough to take that loan out, so you are grown enough to pay it back. I am not going to do it for you. No,
I'll move on and find someone with no debt.
Exactly.
You start getting that loan at 17.
It is what it is. You were still grown enough to take that student loan debt. You need to pay it back, because once we get married, your debt becomes our debt, and I cannot allow that. No.
So I get it from
you
Uncle
need to
Junior.
take care of that.
I get it from Uncle Junior because we was in the military, so we don't understand what they got to go through just to get in school and how much they have to have this money approved before they can apply for classes. But
It's a form you fill out. That's all it is.
I understand.
It is a form you fill out, and then they give you some
And it,
money, and then every semester they pay it out. The thing is, they do not
I
tell you
understand.
that after 6 months after you quit school, you have to pay it back plus interest. That is your debt. You pay that. I am not doing it because I did not sign that piece of paper that said that I wanted to go to school and get this degree. No, pay that back because again, when we get married, your debt becomes our debt, and I am not going to allow that. I do not care the circumstances. The circumstances are immaterial. The fact of the matter is the debt is
It's the
still
reality.
there, and it doesn't matter. The debt is still there. The debt needs to be paid, and I ain't doing it. So you need to figure some things out before we even take another step forward. No.
So I get both sides of the discussion. I really do, but I think my answer is probably a combination of both. To where we like Nick D said here, and I know Nick is like extremely analytical. That's why that's why we tight like that. It's always been discussed and decided that I manage the finances in my household. I am very analytical, budget minded, and organized, so everything is done promptly and precisely. Because I have that mindset, right? I am also the type of person that do not need that you have to have do not I don't believe that you have to have a perfect credit score. I don't believe that you have to have a zero balance on all debt. However, we're going to have the discussion up front, and then we're going to talk about what's the plan of attack to pay it off. And here's the deal: that doesn't guarantee we're going to be together for a long haul, but at the end of the day, I just helped somebody regardless of we're together or not. And I think that for me, I think that's the right thing to do. I don't mind helping people when it comes down to looking at certain things. But I think when we put that stigma on a person, like you got to have a perfect credit score, you got to have zero debt, you got to have your own car, you got to have your own house. So now we're getting into some type of segregative selection that has nothing to do with the fact that this person is human. They may have made some mistakes in their life, but they're growing. And if they're growing, then I don't mind helping you, but we're not going to say I do until we get to the point of resolving a lot of this.
That was my point. Let me explain the scenario that I would do. This is me speaking for me. I would speak to my lady and say, hey, I need to see what type of debt you have, if you have any. If you do, okay, fine. We are going to be living under my roof anyway. I tell you what, I will take care of all of the bills. I will put 10% away in an emergency fund. You use all your money from your job to clear your debt. And the moment you clear your debt is the moment we jump that broom. I do not know any woman breathing that would not take that deal because they do not have to do anything except for focus on what they need to focus on because I have the rest. Women always ask, what do I bring to the table? Nothing, because I do not have to bring anything to the table. Do you know what I bring? I bring covering. I bring the house with the beautiful dining room with that chandelier hanging from it that you want to put that table in. I'm covering you. You don't have to do anything but bring in the table. I got you. Take care of that. And then once you take care of that, we can move on.
Yeah, you still
Yeah. The weather seemed to be better, but I
there. You
don't know.
go. There you go.
Oh, I'm good.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. What I was gonna say was on the traveling geek. He had said something about being grown folks. We have a lot of people that are grown in age, but not necessarily mature. And that's the problem. Whereas we get into relationships and we spend more time planning a wedding, and we didn't even plan for each other. We didn't plan for our our present day, nor the future. And we find out later they got $150,000 in debt. And but you are in love and things like that. We got to have these discussions. We can't just have a quick discussion and do the quick rabbit thing that coach was talking about and then think, oh, this is my one and only for the rest of my life. And then we go on and think that life is gonna be peaches and cream. No, you gotta have all these conversations and realize, like, hold up, if we gonna get so I can know what it is, because if there any problems and concerns. Whereas if I know going in, we can make a plan so we can tackle this thing before we even get into it. Because I'm like, Chris, I don't want your debt. No, because once we combine, your debt is my debt. And a lot of people get together, whether it be child support becomes your debt. So you got to know all these things before you jump that broom, before you make that big decision because you like the way they made you feel. No, you got to have a conversation before you just go into it nose wide open.
Absolutely, absolutely. Listen, we got to keep pressing. I'm sorry. And Miss Angela Yvette, thank you for all that you're saying because Roland has pegged you as being a person who actually has some pretty good financial awareness. So before y'all get mad, go see Miss Angela Yvette. No, I'm joking. But no, we greatly appreciate that. Good conversation in my household. We split our bills 50-50. That is definitely a technique to use. So we're going to move on to the next topic because we are getting tight on time. Remember, we're focusing on feelings, right? So the next topic is practicing emotional regulation. Now, with emotional regulation, this involves developing strategies and techniques to manage our feelings effectively. It's not about suppressing or avoiding feelings, but rather understanding and accepting them, then deciding the best way to react. This could involve practices like mindfulness, cognitive reframing, deep breathing, or speaking with a trusted friend or therapist. By cultivating effective emotional regulation strategies, we can navigate through our feelings in a healthy way and maintain emotional balance. The scenario: consider a situation where your young child is prone to throwing tantrums. Each episode of disruptive behavior results in a house full of tension, with you as a parent feeling increasingly overwhelmed and stressed. Over time, this repeated cycle seems to fuel your irritation, leading to more frequent outbursts from you than you'd like. The first question in reference to this particular scenario: given the situation, how can you begin to practice emotional regulation to manage your feelings of stress and irritation effectively?
Whoop them. You feel a whole lot better, guaranteed. Stress come down, everything just better. No, I'm just picking. I'm just playing.
We do not condone violence on the
We do
Empower
not
Perspective
condone
podcast.
violence. However, North Carolina is a capital punishment state.
Hey man, whatever ways you deal with your child. But anyway, let's get
I ain't
to
got no little ones. My youngest 18.
So are you saying how I handle my feelings of stress and irritation?
Yes, sir. How can you begin to practice
Ooh,
emotional regulation to manage your feelings of stress?
I this is I will leave this to you all because I have no idea.
Well, I think I had to be forced to handle my emotional levels and all that by going to anger management and stuff like that because I would fly off the handle and get into situations where the military say, "Hey, you can't do that," and so I had to learn techniques and go through therapy to actually do it, and that's what it takes sometimes. So before you get to that point where somebody forces you to, or you make a mistake and do something stupid, you know where you are. You know if you're a hothead, so you should know already to where I just explode. Whereas beforehand, I would just go off at at a whim.
Whew, I'm over here trying to figure out an answer that's not going to involve because do I think whooping is always the answer? No. Do I think whooping is an answer? Yes, but I'm not going to whoop to death, right? It's one of those things. Like for me, whoop with my children. Uh, I can't remember a scenario where whooping didn't assist in my scenarios, right? But is at the point to where I started early enough that now I don't remember the last time I pulled a belt out. You get what I'm saying? Because when I ask for something to be done around my house is done. I set my precedence. So for me, when I read the scenario and hear the scenario of continue, if I'm not walking around my house continuously irritated, we just gonna get that straight with it, But if in this scenario, it sounds like the child might need to go speak and talk to somebody because there's something, or both of us, family counseling, something needs to happen because something has happened and has broken the relationship between parent and child that I can't get any resolve in in a scenario with a young, because I see it says young child. I don't know how young you're saying, but all my young children don't play with me. And that's not being funny. That's being real. We laugh, we play around the house, we shoot Nerf guns at each other around my house. We're happy go lucky. But when I say it's time for y'all to sit down, it's time to sit down. And that's like, so for me, it just sounds like something in that relationship was broken. And if it's beyond the repair of the parent, then we need to go to counseling.
I would say if this behavior is going on a consistent basis, then maybe at some point the parents have allowed it to happen, and the escalation have grown to a certain point to where this is the behaviors now. I would say that the parents need to, in assuming that they were talking about the parents in this situation, that they have to, I wrote down, they have to, first of all, to practice the emotional regulation, is they have to be able to identify their feelings, or at those points when they're feeling stressed, and then at some point they have to seek some sort of assistance or some way to help deal with those feelings of stress, some sort of support from outside entity or somebody to help you manage and deal with those feelings and different things that you got going through. Because, as adults, we all have to know how to manage our feelings. And when we have kids, just being real, sometimes them jokers can really, really trigger us when it comes to some of their behavior, because we we try as parents to teach them, and then when we teach them but they're not displaying the behavior that we have taught or that we thought that we taught, then it can become very frustrating. So I think is, first of all, one of the things you need to do is identify those feelings before you can start it practicing, and then eventually get some sort of support or help. I mean, support comes in so many different forms, that it could be books, it could be podcasts, it could be therapy, it could be talking to the pastor, it could be so many different ways, talking to a coach, talking to a mindset coach, talking to different people to try to help you figure out some way of dealing with those feelings of stress and irritation, so that, because you're going to have to deal with it. You still got to deal with little Johnny throwing tantrums. So you want to be in a clear state of mind before you decide to whoop or do anything like that anyway. So you got a child, you're going to have to deal with it. So you better get good at managing your emotions, and you're regulating your emotions, so you can be a good parent.
I like it. I like it. I've heard everything from, spare the rod, spoil the child. They know daddy. That's what I got from Gaddy. Um, and I got Uncle Junior. You mentioned something along the lines that parents are responsible for enabling behavior. And I don't disagree, brother. Roland, I couldn't capture all of yours. I do apologize, but I understand what's going on over there. I got you, bro. I don't disagree at all with any point that was actually made. But I do believe that a lot of times parents need to search themselves for the behavior that they allow within their own house. The behavior that exists is not void of what you've actually allowed to persist. I think that's the key. I'm gonna say it again. The behavior that exists is not void of the behavior that you allow to persist. So if you have allowed this to happen and have allowed that to happen, you got to look at who does the child spend the majority of their time with. For me, I think it's important in situations where my child have stretched me. That's the term I'm going to use because we live and I don't want to offend anybody. So when my child has stretched me, I will exercise some mindfulness techniques. I think it's important not to respond immediately, because when you respond immediately, you tend to use adjective, adverbs, and superlatives. As you're talking with your child, you may look at lashing out at your child, things of that nature, and then those things can have adverse effects over the long term. So you might want to look at doing deep breathing. You might want to take some time to yourself. You might want to go sit in a dark room for about 5 minutes and gather your thoughts so that you can effectively handle the situation. Send the child to the room. Like the worst thing I'm telling you, the worst thing you can do to a child is send a child to the room and let them wait on what getting ready to happen to them. Man, listen, I remember those days. Wait, go in your room. Your daddy be home shortly. Man, dog. You know what I'm saying? Like it's the wait. The wait was worse than what actually happened after the wait. So don't be afraid to send the child to their room and have them to wait for you to calm down. I think those are very good practices because it puts you in a position to where you understand I don't like the behavior, but I still love the child. We have to keep that in mind. When we look at it from that perspective, then that changes everything. We don't let them forget. So we're not going to put it off to the end of the week or the weekend or anything. No, it's just going to be a few minutes for me to gain my bearings, for me to get back into control of myself, right? Because we know when emotions go up, cognition slows down, right? So for me to gain control, once I gain control and understand and assess the situation and have in my mind how I want to handle the situation, then I go up there and I get the child involved with the situation by talking to them and asking them questions. And I think a lot of times when you do that, you will find that they probably was just acting out of some learned behavior that they acquired. So that's just kind of like my thoughts when it comes down to it. Um, Diving into the chats because I think this might be the last one that we have before we have to close out. Let's go with Michelle Ray. Michelle Ray said that Uncle Junior, absolutely. How did we get here? There are many warnings prior to the tantrums. I agree 100%. Like your child didn't just start throwing tantrums today. In most cases, it's like a slow build. One moment there may be something that they throw on the table extra hard, and then it goes from there to them walking off, stumping or whatever, or whatever. I think Uncle Junior used the example of them exhaling hard, stuff like that. All of that stuff is conducive to what is to come. And if you let it exist in your space, then trust me, it's going to grow. It's just like, I hate to say it, domestic, DV, right? When you look at DV don't just happen in the dating stage. DV is something that's a slow build. First, it's an aggressive tone, then it's an aggressive behavior, then it might be a bump. The next thing you know, you're Icantino. So that's just kind of like how I envision it. So I appreciate that. Lisa Keys says that I am learned in progressing to, no, I'm saying I have learned, uh, I am learning and progressing to conceptualize how to practice emotional regulation. I ask myself questions and come up with a plan to regulate my emotions. I would ask my mate or friends how these behaviors or emotions affect them, considering how it affects my relationship. I put a plan in action. Absolutely. I think that's a great way of doing it. Like you have to have a plan for you losing your cool. Like what is your go-to thing that helps you to calm down relatively quickly? And I like that concept. So thank you for sharing that, Lisa Keys. I hope for anybody who's listening, they took that as a note. Cassandra says, now with older children and adults, I have to separate myself and think about it and then come back and visit the situation. Absolutely, because she might have to refer you to Levi. So going down to Angela Yvette. Angela Yvette said, I taught my children how to manage and talk about their emotions. I would also take myself out of the situation so that I can gather my emotions and let them know once they calm down and are ready to use their words to talk about their emotions. We would talk about them. I like that because within the confines of everything that she says, there's a number of teachings that happen. First of all, for them to talk about their emotions, they're going to have to find a way to resonate with their emotions. So, what I'm hearing here is that there's going to be a practice put in place through the art of conversation that help them articulate how they're feeling and why they're feeling the way that they're feeling. So, I really like this statement. So, thank you, Ms. Angela Vet. Okay, as always, this is one of those moments that it's bittersweet for us because it kind of takes us into our final thoughts. And so we're gonna try to get the poor man Dr. Phil in early because he struggled streaming tonight. And if he can't go, then following behind him, we're gonna go Brother Gaddy. So we're gonna go in the round. Like I gotta reach over here on my screen, you on this side. So we're gonna start here, down, down, and then here. So we're gonna start with the poor man's Dr. Phil. So come on, sir, give us what you got.
Sorry for sound. But being emotionally intelligent is one of those things that you have to work on within a relationship, any relationship, especially when it comes to finance, because no one wants to be bombarded or blindsided by anything that may come up, especially when you're starting out. When you get into a relationship, everything should be on the table, not just anything your past lovers and things like that. Don't be so concerned with those aspects of life, but be concerned about what to get you to the next level, your finances, your credit scores, and things of that nature. Work together, communicate on everything, and realize that your money is her money is your money, even if it's not in the same bank account. Because if we're working towards the relationship, that's what matters, the relationship. So I help you, you help me, we help one another succeed.
Yeah. Oh man, having the conversation and flipping to feelings, right? It's funny to me because even in the conversation, having the conversation, feelings can jump up, and I bring that up because feelings sneak up on you. You know, we could have a plan in place, and those are very good practices, but feelings is something that happens instantaneously as a reaction to a a response or a reaction to something that was said to you or done, or something that wasn't done that you asked for it to be done. So we have to get to a place to where we learn, or practice, because that's how we learn, practice the behavior of taking a breath, for me, of taking a breath, stepping back, understanding my feeling at the moment, but understanding what my end goal I desire is, and then try to map out my behavior concerning whatever my end goal is. So we're talking about feelings, and I know we're not done with the conversation, but that's the one thing we have to remember: it sneaks up on you. So while you can, while you're in a clear head, start practicing behaviors that becomes automatic, so that when your feelings change, you don't respond to it automatically. So we don't make harsh, rash, and bad decisions that affects the rest of our lives or the rest of our relationship.
Feelings. I guess my final thought would be, think about what would benefit the whole before you fly off the handle, because it is supposed to be about the whole. It is not supposed to be about you. It is not supposed to be about your partner. It is supposed to be about the both of you combining and working cohesively for something bigger than the both of you. Feelings change, feelings are fleeting, but they are relevant. So when addressing them, understand that it is supposed to be about the elevation of the whole and not just you getting something off of your chest. I guess that would be my final thought.
I like that. I wrote down a couple of different things when it came to my final thought, but I'm gonna stick with the fact that, when it comes to emotional intelligence, it it's more about, it goes beyond your own feelings, and it kind of includes the understanding of the other person's and feelings and emotions and different things like that. So um when it comes to feelings, I think is fair to say that emotions change all the time. I think in the day, we can go through a multitude of different feelings. I may wake up, I feel this way. Something may happen, I feel this way. Something else may happen, and I may feel this way. I think that when it comes to emotional intelligence and feelings, we have to understand that our feelings are going to change. The feelings of our partner are going to change. Our feelings are not always going to be in sync, and we have to be able to establish great communication or effective communication, to whereas when those feelings are off and we don't necessarily agree, or there is a situation that we have enough emotional intelligence that we can still get through those feelings that we may be having at that particular time.
Very good conversation. I would say my final thoughts for this evening is centered around a few things. First and foremost, I believe that every day is another opportunity that I have to be a better version of myself. So when I look at myself, I need to be better than what I was yesterday. That's just what I truly believe. When it comes down to my feelings, they are minds and minds alone. I cannot, again, make anyone else responsible for how I feel. I think too many times what we do is we take our feelings and project them on somebody else and make them accountable for how we feel, and then they do all kind of cheetah flips trying to figure out how to make you happy. That is the biggest lie that has ever existed since I was a little boy. We have to stop projecting our feelings on people. Here's the deal: conflict is inevitable. I want to say that again. Conflict is inevitable. It is going to happen. All you have to do is spend a little bit of time with a person, and eventually you will disagree about something. Remember, there's only one person who is the most important person in that relationship, and that is the relationship itself. My feelings will always serve to do two things. My feelings will always protect or serve me. That's it. Your feelings will always reflect you back to your flesh. That's it. So as long as I keep projecting my feelings and putting my feelings in the relationship, then we will always run into a problem. We have to keep in mind when conflict happens, the conflict is situational. But at the end of the day, I still love the person. So I have to be careful not to do and or say something in the midst of conflict that when conflict is over, I have now severed the relationship to where it's getting to the point to where we cannot repair it. That happens way too many times, and we have to learn to slow ourselves down. Remember, when emotions are high, processing is low. You don't process your thoughts well. You just respond to one thing that you heard a person say without listening to the entirety of the message. So again, we have to get to the point to where this thing is constantly engaged. This is the thing that separates you from animals. I want to make sure I'm clear when I say that. This is the thing that separates you from animals. So use it. Keep it engaged as best we possibly can, because every time it disengages and you go to your primal thinking, then you will always get to the point to where you want to either fight or flight. That's just what it is. So that being said, I think that kind of concludes my final thought. And what I want to share with everybody, I want everybody to remember, come back next week because we have to finish out this conversation, because next week we're going to combine them together. How do feelings and emotions, because we understand that feelings and emotions are the same. So how do feelings and emotions collaborate? How do they connect? How do they actually manifest themselves in our lives? I think this will be a good conversation as well, and I hope you guys are finding pleasure in this conversation that these gentlemen are bringing to the table. Again, give my man over here some grace. The poor man, Dr. Phil, he's just going through some bad storms right now, but generally that brother's on fire, and I know he was ready for it tonight, and he's a little disappointed. So that being said, have a great rest of your evening and have an even better weekend. And we'll see you next week, same time, same place on the Hearts of Men podcast.